Hi, good morning, everyone. All right. So yesterday we started with the concepts of workflows. Now let's create for this configure a workflow rule to notify the lead person upon creating a new lead record inside the object. See, first of all, let's understand what exactly is the use case. All right. So if you go to the lead object and you press this new button, you entered whatever is required into the field, and then accordingly create a new lead record, right? For example, let's say that this one is that lead record, what has been created just now. Now, whenever you create this lead record, there's a field called email. All right. So this field obviously would contain the email ID of this particular lead record. Now, what we have to do over here is like, as soon as a lead record is getting created inside the object, we have to deliver one email to this particular email ID to the particular lead person. And in that email, we should give her acknowledgement. We should give him acknowledgement that your lead record has been created inside the database successfully. All right. So this is a kind of acknowledgement email that should fire automatically as soon as a lead record is created inside the object. And this time it should happen automatically, not manually. All right. And see, this could be the case with any another object as well. I mean, I could tell you that as soon as a candidate record is being created, so you have to acknowledge that candidate. How to acknowledge him? By you have to deliver him one email by which you have to acknowledge as soon as a position record, as soon as an hiring manager record is created. So this could be with any another object. Lead is just an example over here. All right. Lead is just an example. What you are understanding right now is the process of firing an email automatically. What you are understanding right now is the process to fire an email automatically whenever a record is getting created inside database. And this could be associated with any object. It could be associated with any standard. This automation, you can design it for any object. Could be a standard, could be a custom object as well. All right. Important here is to understand the process, not what exactly we are doing on which object. Important here is to understand with the workflows, how can I design an automation? How can I design a rule, an automated rule, where as soon as a record is getting created inside any object, would be among the standard or maybe the custom. So as soon as a record is getting created inside any object, how to fire that email automatically, how to design that automation. So understanding that is basically that process is more important over here. Right. So see, whenever we fire an email, we must have something called as an email template. So I would first of all go to the setup menu and I'll see to this whether corresponding to lead, do I have any email template? If it would be there, I'm going to use it. If it is not there, I have to create it. All right. So I would, that was the reason we studied email templates prior to this topic. So I'm going with setup, and then in the setup, I'll go with administrator. In the administrator, I'll go with communication template, I expand it, and I'll go to classic email template. So my first observation would be, I have to check whether I am having a corresponding email template for this or not. So this is something, a custom email template. Let me see what this is all about. Dear candidate. So this is about candidate object. This is about hiring manager object, right? Because new case register, new hiring manager. So this indicates that we don't have any such email template that have the merge fields related to lead. So I would first of all would create, I would first of all create one corresponding email template. So I'm selecting the type, the email template type as text only. And after this, I'll press this next button. Making this available for the use. Name, I'm giving new lead creation notification template. All right, new lead creation notification template. You can specify any name, but try to give the name as relevant as possible. Now it would obviously require subject and the body. So this, I'm just copying it from the notes. Congratulations, where we would going to give like lead's first name and the last name from the merge field, and your lead record has been created successfully. That is what is our subject is. Now let me copy this content as it is. I would paste it, and whatever the necessary alignments and what is required, I'll have to do it because this is not an HTML. So I think this seems to be all good, all right? It's already have been formatized properly, or that's a good thing. Let's save this. Let's save this. Now you can see what we have used the merge fields from the lead object, right? And there is no need to go for send, test, and verify merge fields from this onward because we are designing an automation. All right, we are designing an automation. Okay, so that automation would automatically be fired. So this was a prerequisite kind of thing. I must have a corresponding email template, and so we created that. Now let's go to the automation. Now the second part of this would be, let's create a workflow. So how to create the workflow? Again, you have to go with the setup menu and then go to the build menu. Inside build, you have create, right? Just expand the create. When you expand the create, you are having workflows and approval. Again, a tab is over there. Just expand this as well. And as you can see, there is workflow rule, a link to create workflow. Just make a click onto this, right? You will be going to land it onto this page. I mean, at least you should read this once you have completed. I'll just press don't show me this page again, and I'll continue, right? So this would list out all of the workflows that you have created, But right now it's blank. Why? Because obviously we don't have any rule, right? Let me create a new rule. Let me create a new workflow rule. And one thing before we start, I wanted every one of you to observe this from the page number 1 itself. Because when we would learn process builder, the first thing what we have as a difference, what we have to identify is how we create that navigation, that process, the number of bouncings from one page to another page, how we create a process builder and how we create a workflow. So you have to observe this, right? So every workflow rule, whatever I would be creating, you would be practicing for the same. You have to observe how many steps are required to create one single rule in workflow, because that is going to be a part of difference between workflows and process builder, right? Chalo. So on this first page, I will click on to new rule button. It would first of all would prompt you that workflow is going to be obsolete in coming days, right? So try the flow builders, because that is what a future of low code automation. All right, but you have to press for now at least that continue in the workflows. All right. Anyways, so on which object you are creating this, for which object? What is my use case? My use case is as soon as somebody creates a new record inside lead object, I have to fire an automation in such a way that this automation would send an email, right? So I am designing this based on what? Based on lead. So the first thing whenever you create a workflow is to select the object, is to select that object on which you designed, on which you wanted to design this rule. All right. Now, because this rule, I wanted to design it onto the lead. And so from the list of all these objects, now this would contain all of the standard and custom objects. Everything have been listed out over here. Everything from A to Z, everything have been listed out, right? So I am selecting lead object. I would be selecting lead object because this use case, this requirement would requires, yeah, I should design an automation on the lead. And so the object which I have selected, on which I'm creating a workflow, is lead. And after the selection of the object, click onto the next button. It would guide you to the next page, page number 2 or 3, whatever you wanted, right? Now the rule name you have to specify. So I'm giving new lead creation notification rule. This is my naming convention. You can go with the same. Otherwise, you can give your own name to the workflows. But my opinion would be like always try to give the relevant name. I mean, just by looking into the name, I should understand what is this process. So when you see my naming convention, I would try to define the object and the process. So new lead means this is something which is onto the lead. Creation notification would define my process. When somebody would create a record, we should have to create a notification. If it's an email template, the last word would be template. If it's a workflow rule, the last name would be rule. If it's a process builder, last would be process. If it's a flow, Last name would be Flow. This is my naming convention. You can follow the same thing. Otherwise, you can design your own. So I'm going with this. I'm going with this, right? Let me copy the same thing into the description as well. New lead creation notification rule. Now see, there are 3 different evaluation criteria as we have studied by yesterday. Created and every time it is edited. Created and any time it is edited to subsequently meet the criteria. Yesterday, even we had a discussion where I told you about created and every time it is edited, created and any time it is edited by meeting subsequent criteria. We have seen differences as well. Right? Now, one more thing here I would like to tell is based on the type of response, there are 2 types of actions: immediate actions, when the response is expected immediately to be get delivered, to be get generated. Based on this, we are having 2 types of actions: immediate actions and time dependent or scheduled actions. Based on what? Based on the kind of responses, based on when the response is expected to be given. If an event would occur, when after event is happened, after the event is occurred, when the response is expected. If the response is expected immediately, then we have to go with immediate response. If the response requires to be get delivered periodically, the responses must be delayed with certain intervals of time. In that case, we go with the time dependent action. Now see, the time dependent actions, the time when you go for the time dependent, although in our case right now, we would go with immediate action. Right now, the use case what you are solving, as soon as a lead record is being created, we have to generate one email. Now, this is a kind of immediate response. It has not mentioned over here. I mean, there is no need to mention, although you could understand. This. I think I have, yeah, over here I mentioned this, but I think there is no need to go with this theory. You can understand that whenever a lead record is created, immediately we have to fire an email. This shouldn't be delayed. और ये ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि लाइक आज मैंने लीड रिकॉर्ड क्रिएट किया है तो 2 दिन बाद उसके मुझे एसएमएस मिले. This should not happen. It's a common sense. We every one of us could understand. Okay, if now the lead record is created, immediately after creation, we should get this response. We should get that acknowledgement email, and it should not be delayed. So this response is first of all what? It's time dependent or immediate. It's an immediate response. All right. So although with this example, what we are solving right now, the type of action is immediate action. The type of action is immediate. And what you have to do, action name is email alert. I mean, you have to send an email. Oh, this is about the nature. This is about the nature of action. And this is about the operation. What operation requires to be get done. So what we wanted to send an email. We wanted to give the acknowledgement, configure and workflow rule to notify, to acknowledge, to send the email, notify, or maybe like acknowledge, or maybe something like send an email. All right, send an email to the lead person, to the corresponding lead person when he would create a new lead record inside the object. So all these things is one and same thing. Notifying, acknowledge karna, ya fiर send an email, it's one and same thing. So what is the type of action? I mean, based on operation, it's email alert. But what is the nature of this? It should be immediate. On which object we are designing this lead? When evaluation criteria is what? Created. Because what has been mentioned? Upon creating. If use case would contain if the record is getting created as well as updated, you will going to see in the subsequent coming examples, I would be covering all 3 of them. But at least for now, for this first example, The criteria should be created only. The criteria should be created. Why it should be created? Because see the statement. Send an email, but when? To the lead person upon creating a new lead record. Whenever a new record inside the lead object is getting created, then and then only. And it has not been mentioned that even though if some old record, some previous records are getting updated, that time also you have to send. Nothing has been mentioned, something like this. All right. So my criteria would be created only. Although there are three criteria, you go with created, and anytime it is edited, nothing happens. But now, one important thing. See, as soon as I'm going to select the second one, created, and every time it is edited, you're going to see something. One warning message. You cannot add time-dependent workflows action onto this option. I mean, if you select the criteria as created and every time it is edited, then you cannot go with the time-dependent actions. And this have been written yesterday. Nile has asked me the same thing. So I told ki theek hai, iske bare mein hum karne wale discussion. Cannot be used for time-dependent actions. You see, cannot be used for time-dependent. The second criteria can be only used for immediate actions. Created and anytime it is edited, every time it is edited, whatever. This cannot be used for time dependent. And why is it so? Why it is so? We're going to have a discussion. There would be one example where we are going to have a discussion onto this. So don't worry. But you have to remember that if you go with created, the first option, you could have immediate as well as time dependent. Same for the last one, created and every time it is edited, meeting subsequent criteria. For this one as well, you can go with immediate and time dependent. But if you go with created and every time it is edited, what you can design only is an immediate action. And we cannot create time dependent actions for created and every time it is edited. All right. But right now my criteria is created. I'm going with same. That was first thing. That was first thing. Now, second is rule criteria. Rule criteria. See, whenever you create a workflow, there is something called as rule criteria. Actually, in process builder also, in flows also. but in workflow, you must at least have one rule condition. That is mandatory. That is mandatory. Now, this is not in case of process builder and flows. Process builder and flows, both of them also have rule conditions, but they are not mandatory over there. If you wanted to check for certain things, then go for a rule condition. If you don't have anything to be get checked, you just wanted to fire the automation, then this is something which is optional. You can skip this. Right now, I cannot skip. See, without giving a rule condition, if I try to go save and next, it would give me the error. It would give me the error that you must at least have one criteria to be get checked. That is what, again, a difficulty, again, a drawback with the workflows, right? We're going to see this in the process builder. We're going to talk about this in the process builder as well. All right. So here I must check one thing. So what I'm going to do would be like, see, what we are talking about. We are talking that whenever somebody go to the lead, press this new button, right? Create a new lead record, right? Create a new record. And as soon as you save this, one email should fire automatically in the backend, mentioning that dear person and all that. See, okay. That email should be fired. But this email field, if you observe, is not a mandatory field. Is not a mandatory field. I could create a record like test workflow rule record number 1. My company is ABC. All right. Open not contracted. See, I'm creating a lead record. I'm not giving the value of email. If I try to save it, it would save. No problem. I have not entered any email ID into this field, and I have saved this record. Let's consider that I have created this automation where whenever a new lead record is getting created, it is firing It is firing, and it is firing an email. It is firing an email. In this case, where the email ID is blank, what is happening inside? Email is getting fired, but it is not going and not going to get, it is not getting delivered to anybody. But see, now we talk about one of the governor limit. We discussed it yesterday that in a single day, what you are using as a free developer edition, although, right? In a free developer edition, I could maximum send 15 email notification per day. Initially, it was 300 when, I mean, later on, Salesforce has reduced this to 15 only. I mean, somewhere around like 2 to 3 years back, when I used to take the training 2 years back, right? That time it was 300 email per day. But now Salesforce has reduced this to 15 email. Although it's 2000, whatever. One email alert has been wasted. Why it is wasted? Why? Because this the email, the lead record was created, and we design an automation that whenever a new record would be created, one email alert would be fired. But because the lead was not having any email ID, lead was not having any email ID, so one email alert has been counted. See, automation would work accordingly what you have designed. So it would not bother whether the email ID has some email values into this or not. It would fire. And it would fire and nothing would happen. So what I would say is, like, out of 15, out of 2000, you wasted one email alert. You wasted one email alert. So that should not happen. We are having very limited number of resources. We should use them very intelligently. And that is the reason I would, before firing this rule, I would check for one thing. What should I check? See what I'm checking. The lead records email field. The lead records email field not equals to blank. If this condition satisfies, then only fire the action, otherwise don't fire the action. See, there is no action over here. This all is about setting up the name, selecting the evaluation criteria, selecting the rule criteria. This page belongs to this. When I save this, you'll come to the action. But even that, in that case, say, let's see, you would fire the action only and only when the lead's email ID is not equals to null. If you save a record like this, where the email ID is null, you would save the record. I mean, automation would not stop you, because that could be done with the validation rule. This is not an validation, this is an automation. Automation would not stop you कि तुम ऐसा कुछ नहीं कर सकते, तुम ऐसा रिकॉर्ड नहीं, नहीं ऐसा नहीं है, रिकॉर्ड सेव होगा. ऑटोमेशन वुड सी वेदर आई वुड ट्रिगर और नॉट. मैं ट्रिगर होना चाहिए कि नहीं होना चाहिए, मैंने ईमेल फायर करना चाहिए कि नहीं करना चाहिए, बेस्ड ऑन व्हाट? बेस्ड ऑन दिस ईमेल. इफ द ईमेल फील्ड इज नल, I should not fire any email alert. And that would happen. So this rule would work. This automation, this workflow rule would work if lead email is not equals to null. Then and then only it would fire the action. Whatever, immediate action or time dependent action. There are two types of action. Whatever would be the action, that would be fired based on this condition. If this condition satisfies, only the action would be fired, otherwise not. This is the first example. That is the reason I'm explaining this. I'm explaining every step out of this. But that would not be the case with second and subsequent upcoming examples. This is the first example, so I am explaining you everything. Everything I am explaining you. And this would happen only once, all right? This would happen only once. And don't expect me to explain this in the same way in the second, in the third. No. There I would more talk about the requirement. Here I'm talking more about the process. So capture this with the first example only. All right. So this is the rule condition. This would not stop this record to getting saved. No. There's only one thing that could stop this, is validation rule or trigger. These are the two things that could stop this. I have not written any validation rule. See, I can do that. Let me show you. Let's talk about that. अगर बात निकली तो पूरा करते हैं. अभी जैसा आपने देखा कि if the email ID is blank, I was still able to save this record. ठीक है, हमने पढ़ा है, देखो अभी भी email ID blank है, record save हो रहा है. हमने पढ़ा है कि how many different ways you could make a field as a required field. There is a required checkbox. You can make this field as a required field by required checkbox. The another way is page layout customizations. You can go, you can expand, you can go and edit layout, and there you would find this field. You can make a double click, you can make it required, right? And what is the difference between making a field required? What is the difference between making a field required? Required by, required by page layout and required by a required checkbox. When you make it required from the required checkbox, it would become mandatory on both level, user interface as well as database. You make it required, you make it mandatory from page layout. It would become a required field, a mandatory field only onto user interface, right? But in both of the cases, one red lines appears over here. One red lines appears over here like this. And you would not identify that this one is where, ye required to hai, lekin kahan se? But the same thing if you create with the validation rule, so it would not appear, any line would not appear over here. But when somebody tried to save the record that time, it would prompt one message, this field is a required field, you must enter. So we can do that, like, we can do that. I can go with view validation and create a new validation. And there I can make email as, you can give any name, email as required. All right. So I'll go with like is blank. Is null. Is null. Why is, is blank was not appearing? Because this is not a text field. And let me try with email. Is null email. Let me check for the syntax. Ideally it should be is blank आना चाहिए था, because email ID internally is a string. Is blank आना चाहिए था, वही तो मैं बोल रहा हूँ. I think this is not going to work, because is null usually is used for the number field, and email ID, by the way, the internal data type of email is string. Is blank email. तो अगर ऐसा आता है, if the email ID now from this onward, देखो अभी तक ऐसा नहीं हो रहा था ना, अभी तक ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं हो रहा था. You go to a lead and you try to create a record. You don't enter the value of email. You don't enter the value of email, and you save it. The record was getting saved. See, abhi bhi save hua. But now I'm designing a validation rule where I would be checking for email field. And if the field seems to be blank, we're going to fire from this onward. We're going to give one message that please enter email ID, something like this. Top of the page, no, on the field. Where field? Email field. This. And let me now save this. So now what would going to happen would be like, now if I try to edit this and I don't give the value of email, all right. And if I now try to save this, it would give me the error. See. So this is also one of the way. I'm not telling you this is not possible. Yes, this is possible. This is possible that you could make a field mandatory. You could make a field mandatory by validation, by something. Actually, this was asked by one of my student. One of my student has asked the same thing. Sir, I could make the field mandatory with validation, with page layout, with required. So in that case, we would not require this. We would not require this. I said yes. If you make, for example, now देखो अभी मैंने ये email field को required कर दिया है. I make it by required by validation. हाँ, इसको मैं required कर सकता हूँ checkbox के through और page layout customization के through भी कर सकता हूँ. अगर ये required रहेगी तो फिर मुझे इस rule की जरूरत नहीं है. Of course, if that field is already required, तो वो कभी null नहीं हो सकती. ये तो पक्की बात है. फिर आपको ये रूल की जरूरत नहीं है. लेकिन एक चीज और, बिना इस रूल के you cannot create automation, because selecting at least one rule condition is mandatory. Selecting at least one rule condition is required. ठीक है, एक तो पहली बात। दूसरी बात यह है कि whenever we work in real time, whenever we work in real time, there are so many different business units. They are using the same fields. For example, if this is the lead object and this is a field of called email ID, now this field email is being used by different business units. For some of them, it might occur that it should be a required. For few of them, it should occur that this is not should be a required. When this is when this is the case where there are so many business units who are using the same module, I'll show you this right now. Let me stop the recording and show you. But first of all, let's discuss this. In real time, this could happen, this might happen that a same field is going to be used by different business units. For few of them, it should be a mandatory. For few of them, it shouldn't be. So I cannot make it required for everybody. Understand? I cannot make required. I cannot make it required for everybody because if that field is become required by required checkbox, there are three options. Let's talk about three options. You click that required checkbox, it would become mandatory for everybody. You create this validation rule, it becomes mandatory for everybody. You can decide with the page layout customization. With the page layout customization, I have this possibility that I could make it required for few of the pages, for not few of them. That to be, I must have different record types. If I'm having different record types, and for some of them, if I wanted to make it required, for few of them, I don't want it, I'll go with that page layout customization. But if this is my case that I don't at all wanted to make it required, then I cannot write a validation rule. I cannot even write page layout customization and everything. That time you have to go with this kind of rules and all that. So that is the reason we usually don't make it required unless it is being asked by every business units. Right? I'll show you something for this. So whenever you are making a field required from the required checkbox, it becomes required. It becomes mandatory for everyone, for all of the record types. Now, for example, there are three business units. Two of them doesn't wanted that fields to be get required. All right. So they would report you. Okay, this fields appears to be mandatory, although it should not be. So that is the reason, right? I mean, instead of making a validation rule, let me deactivate this first of all. So instead of making a validation rule, I would try to do it inside automation. Okay, inside automation. That is what it would help me out. Now that field is not required. अब ये देखो मैंने automation ये validation rule deactivate कर दिया. Now if I try to save it, if I now try to it would save. So this is not at all a mandatory full field for anybody. But if this automation would fire, it would find out the value. Okay. So this is one smart way. This is the smart way to check the things in automation rather making the field mandatory. All right. So adopt this. इसको adopt करिए आप लोग. Intelligently काम करेंगे. ठीक है. Blindly नहीं करेंगे. हम जब भी हम कुछ काम करेंगे, whenever we design certain things, तो हम पहले रिसर्च करेंगे, हम सोचेंगे उसके बारे में, डिस्कस करेंगे, उसके बाद में हम डिसीजन लेंगे कि क्या करना है. ठीक है. चलिए. So all right. So this everything. Now what type of action right now I'm having immediate action only. Time dependent पे बाद में आएंगे. अभी हमें email fire करना है and that should be immediate. So out of this all, add workflow actions. Right. I have to select email alert. There are 4 actions. Assign a new task, send an email, outbound and update a field. All right. I would select email alert. Email because I wanted to give an email. Now let's give the name new. What is that lead? New lead creation notification alert. The last name is alert because that's an email alert. All right. The object is lead and email template. Do you have? Yes, we have. We just have created one email template, right? New lead creation notification, right? This is what we created. अभी बनाया अपन ये वाला. new lead creation notification template, right? So I'm selecting the same template. And from here, you have to select email field. From here, the list of all, you have to select email field and then select this email, add it. And this you have to do every time. Now, can any one of you please in the chat, 5 maximum, just give me your email IDs. So I would also show you how the CC copies are being delivered. 5 among you, just give me your email ID. Come on. Chetna, Shelke. Yes, next. Nail Masir. Kajal and Akhtar. Yes, yes, yes. Got it, got it, got it. That's it, that's it. Akash. Kajal. Now. I think K should be small. Anyways, yeah. So what would happen would be like, you know, कि अभी जब मैं email fire करेंगे हम automation के through. So the email ID what I have entered in the time of lead creation, along with all these 5 person would also going to get a CC copy. All right. Let me save this for future as well. Save it. All right. See, our design inside the immediate, I added one action. Now I can see that there is one more action I could add. So yesterday we were discussing one thing that, see, a workflow could have 40 immediate action. Workflow could have 40 immediate action. You just inside the immediate action, you just added one. What is that type? Email type. Now you could add one more action. One more action of any type. Could be a new task, could again be an email alert, could be an updated field, could be an outbound. You could add one more action. And how many actions you could add it over here as a part of immediate? How much you could add? 40. You right now is having one action, you could add 39 more. So this governor limit signifies, मैंने कहा था कि मैं इसको बताऊंगा अच्छे से. So this governor limit signifies that in a workflow, you could have maximum 40 immediate actions. Over here, I could add 40. I added one. I could add 39 more. We don't require it. Just try to understand the governor limit. All right. That's it. Now this has been done. This has been done. Let me press this done button. All right. So see, you created the rule, but that is not in active state. You created the rule that is not inactive. You have to active it. You have to active. On which object you created this? You created this on a lead. You created this on a lead. All right. On a single object, we could maximum create 500 workflow rules, but that doesn't mean that all 500 should remain inactive. How much activated rules you could have on a single object? Maximum 50, not more than that. So right now you created a rule on lead. You could create 500 leads, 500 workflow rules on this object, on every object. But that doesn't mean all 500 you could make them active. No, out of that 500, 450 would remain inactive and 50 would be activated. 50 can be activated. All right. That is what that governor. Let me, sorry. Let me activate this. So to activate, you don't require to edit. You just have to press this button, activate. Now this would have active. चलो अब ये rule activate हो चुका है. Time is to test it. How to test it? Create a new lead record. चलो, go to lead object because you fired this on created, है ना? Create a new lead record. Workflow lead creation test number 1. ठीक है? Company is this. Let me give the email ID to SFDC kasim@gmail.com. Right? What are my condition? Let me select all them. I'm just randomly selecting anything, nothing else. Okay, chalo. So see, when this rule would get fired, it would first of all would check the value of email. And email should not equals to null. Yes, of course, email is not null. Email is not null, the rule would fire. When the rule would fire, it would automatically generate one email. All right. And this email I am expecting onto this email ID. Right. So let me save this record first of all. As soon as I'll save it, automatically one email would be generated. That is what an automation, right? So this record has been created. Now record has been created. Let's go to that email ID. See. Congratulations, lead name. What is my lead name? Workflow lead creation test one. Your record has been created successfully. And there's all other details. As per the email template, the merge fields, these are the details. How do you find this email? Did I test it like this? क्या मैंने यहाँ से test किया? नहीं. I just have created a workflow rule. Workflow rule on created. Whenever a new record would be created, it would fire automatically. I go to that object and I create a new lead record. Every time I do the same thing, one email alert would be getting delivered. This is what an automation is. This is what an automation is. All right. So go with this example by today. Today, go with this. And there are few more assignments. Yes, there are few assignments as well. Configure the workflow on the contact object, whatever. Go with all of them. Go with all of them. Right. One last thing would be like, these guys also have received this email. Chetna, Nail Masir, Akash, आप सबको भी email आए होंगे because I can see your names on CC. All right. I can see your names on CC. So this email has been delivered to all of you 5 guys as well. Now, when you attempt these assignments, you'll have to keep me in CCC. All right. This is that email ID. Don't go with SFDC Kasim, go with Kasim.14fab. So when you would solve these assignments, even this problem as well, you have to keep me in CC so that I would also understand who has solved, who has not solved this, right? So when you would solve, keep me in your CC. All right. So in next session, I'm going to start with the time dependent actions. Let me give you this command now. You can unmute yourself. Yes. Any questions?
Sir, I'm sorry if I missed it, but आपने हमको CC में कब डाला? मतलब was it in automation? Because वो पता ही नहीं चला. I'm sorry sir अगर मैंने मिस किया हो तो.
कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं. Let's see how I could come to that. नहीं, मुझे deactivate करना पड़ेगा. When I created an email alert, right? So you select everything from here. You have to select email and then over here, I ask you to give the email IDs. So you can enter up to 5 email IDs. So this is the place where you have to keep me on to CC. When you would design this, just add this email ID like this. Understood?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yes. Any questions? All right, then. Thank you so much for joining.